The recent series I filmed called Truth Works was taken from a quote by Sir Alex Ferguson, who was the football manager of the famous club Manchester United. And so with that philosophy in mind, I want to get to the crux of the matter of this project, A Part of Our World, and what's behind it. So I was born into a Catholic family in Sydney. My first 10 years was in a Jewish neighbourhood. I went to an Anglican Church of England school, and so I had quite a lot of exposure to the idea of God and all that sort of thing. You know, being Catholic back in those days meant you went to church every Sunday. Then there were religious studies at school that we had to do. And also my first ever job was as a chorister in a place called St. Mark's Cathedral, which is an Anglican church. And so there I basically did a lot of weddings and also the odd Sunday service. So I had quite a bit of exposure to the idea around religion and the teachings of Christianity and so forth. And being from Sydney, which is a secular place, it's not very religious. You know, you're surrounded by people, a lot of people who are close to me who are atheists or agnostic and so forth. And I myself have had my own thoughts around that over the years, like the usual questions, like how can God be everywhere at once, for example, and if God was real, then why is there suffering in the world, all that sort of thing. And so I've had my own sort of inner battles with those kinds of ideas and the idea of God and all that sort of stuff. Then when I was around 21, by chance I went to this meditation retreat, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just went mainly based off the experience of a good friend of mine who came and saw me straight after it and said, you got to go do this, it's really amazing. And at the time they came to see me straight away, and they just were, his eyes were really clear, he was kind of beaming and sort of really just vibing on it. And so I immediately booked in and went to do this course, not knowing what I was getting myself into. I knew that it was 10 days, and you're not allowed to talk during those 10 days. You can speak to the manager or teacher, that sort of stuff, but you can't talk to other meditators, and that men and women are separated, men on one side of the center, women on the other, sort of thing. So there's no distractions. And this experience really just was profound for me. It turned out to be super profound and super insightful. And basically what it was just self-observation of, first of all, breath. So it's just sort of attention all around just the entrance to the nostrils and eyes closed, watching the breath come in and out, not regulating it, just observing it as it is, and putting full attention there, and attention on the feeling of the breath coming in, breath going out. Before long, you start to feel the difference in temperature of breath coming in. The breath coming in is colder than the breath coming out. Then you're feeling the breath on this section just underneath the nose, above the upper lip. And you do that for 3.5 days, 10 hours a day, and you're just putting your attention there. And the idea is that, you notice over that time that when your thoughts become agitated, become anxious about things or angry about things and all that sort of thing, then you notice that your breath becomes harder or faster. And when you're relaxed, it becomes, slower and more relaxed. And so you can really see the correlation between your thoughts and your breath. So you're starting to observe your mind, really, that when it's agitated, your breath becomes harder, faster. When it's more relaxed, it's less so. And you're not trying to relax the mind, you're just observing the breath. You find yourself going away on thoughts and then coming back to breath. Like, that's the technique. It's just trying to build up awareness and your ability to be able to keep your concentration on your breath during that time. And so over time that gets better, as well as your awareness getting really much better as well. And your awareness of sensation there under the nose, above the upper lip, really starts to become so much more sort of pronounced. And so what you end up doing is you take that awareness, and this is the actual technique of the meditation, is you then take that awareness and put it to the top of your head and then work away all over your body, like on surface level. By the end of the course, you're going internally, like you're feeling the energy all throughout your body. And you start to really understand the correlation between your mind and what you feel physically. When you're feeling anger or sadness or ill will, these different memories that might come up for you, you sort of burning away and being really angry and upset about things. And you find that even though someone else may have, hurt you in the past or something like that, it's actually by you just replaying it in your mind and going over it and feeling resentment, you yourself are suffering. So you're really getting down to the crux of things, like the base of what is actually happening in the body. And what becomes clear is that when we do have thoughts that are negative, or things that are sort of bad, like hatred, ill will, animosity, jealousy, anxiety, all that sort of stuff, then we start to suffer. We suffer in the physical level. And the sensations is really, I'm kind of getting a bit not carried away, but giving maybe a bit too much information. But sensations are really what are called the unconscious part of the mind. The conscious part of the mind, our conscious thoughts, is such a tip of the iceberg type thing. The unconscious is where everything goes on. And you can really see that by, if our conscious mind was so powerful, then we'd just be able to go, okay, I'm just going to do this, that, and the other, and never again sway from that. If you want to get fit, for example, you're just like, okay, I'm going to get fit, and that's it. But actually there's these other things that come through, and those are things that are held in the sensation or part of the body, if that makes sense. The memory of the body, in a way, the memory of what we've been through, the reactions. Because the way to process reactions, such as anger, is not to express it or suppress it, but observe it. The way you observe it with equanimity is via the breath, is one way to do it. And the other way is, or the more powerful way, ultimately, is to feel it with equanimity and non-reaction, which allows it to arise and pass away. And so all throughout our lives, we haven't done that. We've expressed it or suppressed things, and it creates this inner tension. And it's why they say we tie ourselves up in knots. So that's what that's what I learned at this meditation retreat. I ended up going back 2 weeks later and doing another one, and this was 30 years ago, and I try to get away and do one every year, 10-day retreat. And over that time, well, really since the first one or two courses, I'd seen enough to understand what I'm talking to you about now. But over the years, my awareness has become subtler to sensational, all that sort of thing, which is irrelevant really. But what I'm trying to get at is that, people ask how God is everywhere. the way that I think God is everywhere is like it's the same way that gravity is everywhere. And that is that whenever we generate negativity, do negative things, hurt others, we suffer immediately. Like that's just the reality of what's happening within us. Even if you don't really realize it at the time. There are things that can be, like people can cause other people to suffer and get a kick out of it because it stokes their ego, but they don't realize that's just layers of tension which they've created in negativity. And even though they've swallowed it down with a piece of chocolate or something that they like, it's a poison pill, which is what I said before in the Truth Works series. So I think that's a really interesting insight into this. Is basically like the technique ended up being the technique that the Buddha brought to the world. The Buddha, people make the mistake as seeing that as another religion. I still, I see this as being, doing this technique as being my way of understanding Christianity better. Because, during all that time where I was, being brought up Christian and doing religious studies at school and all that sort of stuff, one of the things that I always wondered about was when Jesus would say, love one another as I have loved you. So that's not Jesus trolling us. Like, how are we supposed to love people as much as Jesus loved us? It sounds impossible. But he's not trolling us and saying, you can't do that. He's telling us to do that. That is within us. It's a possibility for us to achieve. So this technique, I'm not going to go further into it, but this technique that the Buddha brought to the world is a way of understanding that. And it's non-sectarian. It's not as though you have to become a Buddhist. In the time of Buddha, there were no Buddhists. He didn't talk about Buddhism or Buddhists. His followers were not called Buddhists. So they just went on the path which he showed them how to do, which is the same as Jesus said he's the way. It's the same thing. So anyway, basically what I'm getting at is that we suffer when we do negative things, we think negatively, all that sort of thing, we suffer immediately. And when we come out of that, when we release these, they're called impurities, through the meditation technique, what's left above all that noise where there's anxiety, anger, ill will, resentment, all that stuff, once that goes away, the foundation is love, compassion, and joy. That's what remains. And that's what the foundation of life is, really, is this sort of coexistence. We all rely on one another. As part of the biosphere, we all rely on one another for our lives. We all coexist. So I'll leave it there, and I'll pick it up again on different parts of this topic, but hopefully that explains a bit of this project. I'm basically saying that to do the right thing is what makes us fundamentally happy.